Shabbat Shalom. We serve the King of Kings. Hallelujah. Thank you very much, Natalie, Ian. What a privilege it is to glorify the name of the King of Kings. Every day of the week, every day of the month, every day of the year, and especially in this glorious, wonderful time leading up to Passover. We stand in the time where we are, commemorating those remarkable events of 3,500 years ago. And we stand in awe of those events that has changed history forever and ever. And we have to ask ourselves, each day of the week, each day of the year, but more so at Passover, what's the relevance thereof for us? It's a time of introspection. It's a time of soul searching. But this time of preparation is a time of healing. And I would like to stand still on this theme of healing today. Because we can focus so much on what is wrong. And we can dig so deep in soul searching and in introspection that we can forget to actually arrive at a point of healing. And then to live in that healing and that knowledge that I have been healed. Because that's why why Messiah came. To heal, to bring healing, and for us to live in that healing lives, and that in victory over pain, over bondage, over destruction. Yes, so that while we are looking at the pain and the destruction, while we see the devastation and everything that goes with it, we can actually be a witness unto His greatness because of healing. And so, we're going to go on a little bit of a journey, like that chap in the photo, a journey of healing. Because I think so much of the Passover message sits in that concept, simple as it is. We sang about it, the Afrikaans song, Herstel my, bring me healing. And it's only the King of Kings that can do so as we are entering in this phase. Between today and Passover, we will also cross this important marker of the 10th of Nisan. The 10th of Nisan is an important marker because that's the day when what happens? Selection of the Lamb. Who will be able to carry the sins of the world? Who will be the one unblemished? We will cross that marker from today forward until we celebrate Passover. Another marker that we have to take cognizance of is that for the past 3,000 years about, the week before Passover, we read the Torah portion of today. The one that deals with leprosy. So we have to ask the question, why have we been instructed by Abba Father in His infinite wisdom, depending whether it's a long week, a long year, or a short year, but the week before Passover, we read Tazria and Metzora. We learn about leprosy. So we have to actually ask ourselves, should we not actually take our cue within the context of healing from what our Father is instructing for us, speaking to us from the Torah portion? That He actually would like to heal us from our leprosy. And that if you read the Torah portion, it goes into amazing detail about this and this and this and that. I mean, it just goes on for endless number of verses as we've read this morning about this condition and that condition, and you can get trapped into those details and actually miss the fact that Abba Father would like to give us, prior to Passover, a message of healing. And so, it's my prayer in preparation for today that He will bring us healing, so that we can be a witness unto the world, the true message, the weight of Passover, that in Messiah there's healing for whatever brokenness we may have experienced and which we may have seen. And on this journey of healing, it's good to start with a word of encouragement from Psalm 9. And Jehovah is a refuge for the crushed one, a refuge in time of distress. Yes, we will suffer distress. Yes, we will be crushed. We are thinking of the olive and the crushing of the olive in order to make olive oil. We're thinking about the gold being refined by fire. And Johan had a massive message 2 weeks ago about fire as well. And those who you know your name trust in you. And those who know your name trust in you. For you have not forsaken those who seek you, O Jehovah. So, as we will see today in several other scriptures, He is the one that leads us to the time of distress. He's the one that occasionally crashes. He's the one that chastises us. And He does so because of love. So that we can cry out to Him, not so that we can stay being crushed, not so that we can stay being distressed, but so that He can reveal Himself and bring healing. And for those of us brave enough who says, yes, Abba Father, in this time of preparation for Passover, in this time where we seek your healing, we will suffer distress. We will be crushed. But we will not stay there because of Messiah, because of the victory. And for those who trust in your name, He will be proven that He has not forsaken us. And because He has not forsaken us, because we will then see Him, we can sing those last verses, those last lines. Sing praises to Jehovah who dwells in Zion, declare His deeds among the peoples. Because out of the distress, out of being crushed, what will we see? His deeds. Which deeds? His healing. And so we will journey today, and we will see on many different places where the Passover message and His name, and we've talked about His names a few weeks ago, converges together so that the weight of His names rests on Passover unto healing. And then the Passover celebration becomes a celebration of healing unto a witness for His name. So behold the Lamb, the one who brought the healing. And so His name, and as we've discussed in the past, which rests on Passover, we see that it is at and during Passover that He sees us, Jehovah Rui. He saw the pain, He heard the cries of our fathers in Egypt, and He then guided them out as their shepherd. And as it was, also He heard and saw the fact that the people on earth can't rescue themselves, and He saw that, and He sent the great shepherd, our Messiah Yeshua, at Passover. Also, It is Him, the one that's lifted up high on a mountain, on a tree, that became the one that will rescue us. But there's this prophecy about make a fiery serpent and set it on a pole, a nest, a banner, Jehovah Nissi. And His name, Jehovah Nissi, the one high and lifted up, the banner, and that at an altar. And so right off the bat, we see a couple of His names converging onto the Passover message. He is the one that sees. He is the one that's the shepherd. He is the one that is high and lifted up. He is the banner, all together with the Passover message. Psalm 9. And those who trust in your name will help you. It will be proven that you will not forsake them, even while being crushed and being in distress. But that is but for a moment, a twinkling unto the healing process. And it continues. So we read about Him high and lifted up, and that prophecy of the fiery serpent in John 3. And as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so the son of Adam had to be lifted up on a higher, on that stick in the desert, so that whoever is believing in Him should not perish, but possess everlasting life. For Elohim so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, Yeshua our Messiah, so that everyone who believes in Him should not perish, but possess everlasting life, healing. So it's in the context of His name, Jehovah Nissi, the one high and lifted up, our banner, the one at an altar, that we also see the Passover message of our Messiah. For Elohim did not send His Son to the world to judge the world, but that the world through Him might be saved, be healed. He who believes in Him is not judged, but he who does not believe is judged already, because he has not believed in the name of the only brought forth Son of Elohim. The name of our Messiah, the Passover message, Him high and lifted up, and healing connected. But it is not just for time past. It's also for time future that the weight of His name rests. It's connected to the greater Exodus, the one that's to come. In Jeremiah 23, and His days Yehudah shall be saved, and Israel dwell safely. And this is the name whereby He shall be called, Jehovah our righteousness, Jehovah Jedekenu. Therefore see the days are coming, declares Jehovah, when they shall no longer say, as Jehovah lives, who brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Metzora, but as Jehovah lives, who brought up and led the seed of the house of Israel out of the land of the north, and from all the lands where I had driven them, and they shall dwell on their own soil. Jehovah, our righteousness, Jehovah Tzedekenu. The convergence, the weight of all His names into the Exodus story, onto the Passover story. And that to deliverance and healing. And that has been made possible because of the great substitution that has taken place on that mountain, where Abraham had to sacrifice his son, his only son, his first son Isaac. And Jehovah called to him from the heavens and said, Abraham, Abraham. And I said, here I am. He says, do not lay your hand on the boy, nor touch him, for now I know that you fear Elohim, seeing you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. And then we know the whole story about Jehovah Jireh, the one who provided. On that mountain where he was slaughtered, for which we then are commemorating and celebrating Passover. I'm not going to go through the entire teaching of all His names, so rest assured. I just wanted to reflect briefly on the fact that when we've read in Psalm 9, that yes, crushed, yes, in distress, but trust in His name, and out of that, the victory and the healing, how that is intricately linked to the Passover story. So yeah, the full weight of His name rests on Passover. I find that rather astonishing that you can take any of the names of Abba Father, of Jehovah that we've discussed, and you can see the clear connections with Passover. So when we prepare for Passover next week, you cannot but sidestep the name, because it has to go through the name. It cannot be a tradition, it cannot be a ritual, it cannot just be because the families have done this. If we do that because of any other reason than the name, then we will not enjoy the rich healing that is on offer for us. And let's not forget the second Passover. It's the only appointment of Abba Father where you can actually have two appointments. If you miss the first one, you can have the second one. None of the other appointments has got a second option. It's clearly documented for us in Numbers 9. The only time where it's been recorded for us as being used is in 2 Chronicles 30, well actually 29 and 30, about King Hezekiah, calling the people together, cleaning everything up, and then says, right, now we are ready for Passover, but because of all the cleaning up and the work that they've done, the priests were not ready. They could not go through the process to be ready for celebrating Passover, and they had to do it the next month. The reason why there's the second Passover option is simply because nobody should be excluded. Give an opportunity for everybody. So if you can't celebrate Passover on the 14th of Nisan because of being unclean or being on travel, whatever the reason might be, then you can do it the next month. Nobody to be excluded from the grace, the kindness, and to enjoy the pleasure of the weight of His name in the celebration of this appointment. Just a little bit of a detour that I'm not going to indulge on too much, but I think we forget about the fact that there's the second Passover, and that it's a very important marker also on our calendar. It's sort of, we've got Passover, everything is about the 14th of Nisan, and then this, what we're happening, and the events and so on, and then we count the days up to Shavuot, count the Omer, count the 50 days, etc. But there's this additional opportunity for everybody to actually enjoy this rich blessing of being able to enjoy in the Passover and the message thereof, and to commemorate that. I also think prophetically that's important. Much has been made about Passover as a very important prophetic marker, but also prophetically, it's an important marker that nobody will be excluded. Everybody. His grace extends. That because of things that in our lives, that He will make provision for everybody, so that nobody who believes in His name will perish. But there's more. And this deals with Mara. I'm going to dwell a little bit on this verse and on Him, Jehovah, who heals us. Part of the journey out of Egypt, part of the Passover process, part of the process of unleavened bread, part of the trek out of Egypt is that you have to stop at Mara. And they came to Mara, and they were unable to drink the waters of Mara, for they were bitter. And the peoples grumbled against Moshe, saying, "What are we to drink?" Then he cried out to Jehovah, and Jehovah showed him a tree, and When he threw it into the waters were made sweet. There he made a law and a right ruling for them, and there he tried them. And he said, if you diligently obey the voice of Jehovah your Elohim, and do what is right in his eyes, and shall listen to his commands, and shall guard all his laws, I shall bring on you none of the diseases I brought on the Metzorites, for I am Jehovah who heals you, Jehovah Rapha. So the question here is, why does he lead them out of Egypt and takes them to bitter waters where he knows they can't drink it? He's the maker, he's the creator. He knows they can't drink it. And the question is, the answer basically to that is, him that knows will take every one of us in our Passover journey, in our life journey, to a Mara, to a place of bitter water. And sometimes we will circle around Mara for many years. Each one of us have to be confronted with Mara. Mara is a time of distress, a place where we've been crushed, a place where we are actually confronted with ourselves and with our own weaknesses and with our own diseases and with our own need of healing. See, even before our Messiah could go through the Passover journey, he had to face his own Mara. He had to go to the garden. And he had to sweat in the garden. The garden was his Mara. Must I drink this cup? Why have you brought me here? And in the garden, he asked the questions similar to what our fathers have asked. Except he said, what was his response? Not my will, but your will be done. So even our Messiah had to visit Mara before he could go to Passover. And so, if our Messiah had to go through Mara and had to stop at Mara, how much more we are being confronted with the bitter waters of Mara. It is at Mara where we cry. The question is, however, what do we ask? Do we ask for water when we full know that he knows we need water? Or do we ask the question, why have you brought me to Mara? What do you want to teach me while I'm here at Mara? Is it perhaps that you would like me to receive healing from you? And that's why he attaches his name, I'm the one that heals, to the place called Mara. And so Mara happens. We can compare notes and say, your Mara, my Mara, everybody's Mara. Whose Mara is the most bitterest, if there's such a word? And we can compare notes and say, well, let's compare it. That's not the point of being at Mara. We've read it in Psalm 9. Let's sing about his deeds. That's where we have to come. We come to Mara not so that we can compare notes about the bitterness of our respective waters, but about the glory of him who heals us, and to his glory, for that to be a witness unto him. And so, the interesting thing is that they can't drink that water. So the waters of Mara is not for drinking. So, what do I mean by the waters of Mara is not for drinking? You arrive at a place, and the person there sitting at the desk tells you what he thinks about the South African government. And you give it onto it. And you just load it, and you just load it about what you think about the South African government. You drag the water of bitterness. You take that cup that he gives you, and you make it overflowing. He tells you what he thinks about person X. And you add to it, and he says, you know what? It's x squared. Actually, it's x to the power of 3. And you add to it. You drink the cup of bitterness, and then you share it. So, what Abba Father, His great wisdom, has done here, by linking the Exodus story to a Mara episode, and linking that to healing, and then link it to the Egyptians and what the Egyptians are doing, linking all of that into a couple of verses, He is saying to us, He knows that through our journey in life, things happen. Things go wrong. Sometimes badly wrong. And there's a lot of bitterness. A lot of hurt. But are we going to take that hurt and share that and magnify and amplify that? Or are we going to seek His healing and share that with the people? Because then He will take that bitterness and He will turn it into sweet water. That same one. He did it. He'd take out of that situation, there was a tree. Miraculously, there was a tree. A tree that survived years and years at bitter waters. Imagine that. Miraculously. And out of that, He then provided sweet waters. So out of the tried and times, out of the distressed times, comes the witness, the sweet witness, unto Him that heals. So how do we look now at our respective the times where we've been hurt? How do we look at Egypt now? How do we look at the situations where we are been crushed now? Now we no longer relish in it and say, my distress, my pain is bigger than yours. No. My God is bigger than any other God. Because He's the one that heals. And so from Mara, we can journey on. And we can move forward. The interesting thing is that the next stop was Rephidim. There was no water. But that's a different story. I don't want to go into that rabbit hole now and go because then we will never get to the end. But the fact of the matter is, at each one of those stations, He tried to teach them life lessons. But at Mara, it was that He knows that what we are suffering. He has created us. But life's bitterness is not for us to drink. And life's bitterness is not for us to share with other people. We are to share the healing story. And so it attached His name, healing, to that bitterness. And to His great, infinite, wonderful name. This story of Mara has got a few offshoots. Because in Psalm 107 we read, and I use the King James Version here, in other places it's the scriptures, but it says it so beautifully. It says that these seas, He takes the person, He says He will take them to the sea, and then they that go down to the sea in ships, that do business in great waters, these seas, the works of Jehovah, and His wonders in the deep. For He command and raise the stormy wind, and which lift up the waves thereof. So He's the one that creates the stormy sea. He's the author of the stormy sea. For these people that's in their boat. Why do you do that? They mount up to the heaven. That is now the waves. Imagine that. Eh? They mount up to the heaven. It means the wave. Mount up to the heaven. Mounts up to the heaven. They go down again in the depth. That's the wave. That's a little boat. You can see the word picture of the little boat going up and down in the waves. That's what He's describing here. They mount up to the heaven. They go down again to the depths. Their soul is melted because of trouble. If you're in a little boat and the waves are 3-4 times the size of your little boat, your heart will melt. They reel to and fro, they stagger like drunken men. These men of the sea, they struggle like drunken men, and they are at their wits' end. They can't take any more. They're crushed, they're in distress. Then they cry unto Jehovah in their trouble, and He bringeth them out of their distresses. He maketh the storm a calm, so that the waves thereof are still. Our great God, the mighty God, the creator of the universe, is the one for the righteous who prays and pray unto Him, who says, You are the one that opens up and closes the doors on our lives. You are the one that guides us. You are the one that teaches us. You are the one that goes in front of us. And you end up in Mara. He says, no, this is the wrong coordinates. It's the right coordinates. Whatever the time of distress is that you are in, whatever the situation is, whatever the trouble that you are being confronted with, for the righteous people who pray unto Him to guide them in their lives, who seek His light, and you're at this point of distress, we have to realize that it's Him who has sent the stormy sea. To cry unto Him. The question is, what do we cry? We have to cry for that healing unto His name. And then out of that comes the testimony. And there's another one, 2 other sort of offshoots of this concept of distress and bitterness that I want to share. One very interesting one is in the book of Esther with Purim. Purim that is just preceding Passover. One of the key elements within Purim, in the story of Purim and the book of Esther, is that Esther had to prepare herself to go and see the king. And we read, for the days of their preparation were completed as follows: 6 months with oil of myrrh in a bath of bitterness. She had to lie for 6 months before she can see the king. And after the bath of myrrh, the bath of bitterness for 6 months, and is followed by 6 months of perfumes. A bath of myrrh leading unto healing. Because what? Myrrh has got massive healing properties associated with it. Out of the bitterness, there's healing. Even Esther, she had to go through this bath of myrrh. It's the same word, Mara, myrrh, it's the same word, bitterness. And so, in preparation to see the King of glory, there's a bath of bitterness. And so, out of Purim, what's the next appointment of Abba Father? See the King, Passover. Out of the bitterness. Obviously, bitterness is not only in the time of Esther and Passover. Bitterness can happen 24/7, 365, any day of the year, any day of the month. It can happen anywhere, any place. And the healing of Abba Father through our Messiah and the Holy Spirit is available everywhere and any time. But we are reminded thereof in this special time that He has appointed for us about this healing. And that we have to look anew, afresh, at the times of distress that we might be in. And not grumble about it. And stand in rebellion against it. Why, Lord? Send it to the neighbors. Whatever. Why me? Yes, you, for healing. We have to change our question and the way we think when we're at Mara. And sometimes we have to lie in that bath of myrrh for 6 months. Like, yeah, is this really necessary? There's someone in a bath of myrrh. But it's after the bath of myrrh is the perfume and the king. So we want to see the king, yes, but we have to receive the healing. In his infinite wisdom, he works with the law of the opposites. Out of bitterness comes healing. Do you trust him? Do I trust him? That he knows that when he leads us to a place of bitterness, that he will actually grow healing out of that, so that it can be unto his glory, unto the magnification of his wonderful name. If we stop at Mara and we say, I can't take it, and you turn around, it's back to Egypt. You say, I can't take this bitterness anymore. You can't see the king. It's as sad and as tragic as that. There's one more example of this bitterness, which we find in a very strange place in the Torah and Scripture. Before I do that, let me just talk about what this word bitterness means. We read that they say the water was unedible, unable to drink the waters, because it was bitter. This word means the causes of that bitterness is discontent and rebellion, and the effects thereof is heaviness, irritation, weakness, stagnation, being beyond life, and barrenness. So that rebellion, that bitterness, this discontent, has got massive implications on our lives. It becomes a heavy burden. Irritation, emotions, weaknesses, death, no witness, and the stagnation in our faith. And that's what he would like to heal us from, so that it can be unto life and to a witness for him. So we don't want to drink of irritation, weakness, stagnation, etc. We want to drink his healing. So because bitterness born in rebellion that leads to more rebellion, which renders us weak and irritable and spiritually stagnant. And so it's so important to be confronted with Mara, so that we can receive that healing from those conditions. The thing is that we have this very interesting situation, this very interesting procedure that's been prescribed to us in the Torah of how to get healing from this bitterness. There's this example of the woman that is suspected of being adulteress. And she has then been led to the tabernacle, to the temple, where she has to drink what? Bitter water. The same word, bitter water. This concoction of the dust from the floor of the tabernacle mixed with water, and then if she drinks from this bitter water, then her guilt will be revealed. But the purpose of this entire proceeding is so that she does not drink this cup. That she's been accused of adultery, then en route to the tabernacle, that she will then what? Reconcile and be healed. And never drink that cup. And so we see the parallel story of our fathers in the wilderness, linked to Mara. He doesn't want them to drink that. He wants to give them healing, give them the opportunity to healing. And then this procedure of the woman accused of adultery. There's time. It's like the second Passover. There's time to make right. So the procedure works as follows. Husband accuses wife being an adulteress. Says, she denies it. He says, well, come with me, let's go to the tabernacle. There at the tabernacle, they will make this concoction of bitter water. You drink the bitter water. If you drink the bitter water, if you're guilty, it will be shown. If you're not guilty, if you're innocent, nothing will happen. And you will be justified. It must be absolutely terrifying for any person to go through that ordeal. But that's us. Remember that. It's but a mirror image of us. We are the adulterous persons who does not live in a perfect relationship with our Messiah. We are the ones been led to the temple, says, if you're going to drink that water, that cup of water on your own works, then it will be revealed that you are adulterous, that you serve many gods, that you're full of sin. But leading up to the tabernacle, leading up to the temple, we can reconcile with our Master. So the purpose is not to drink that cup. The purpose is for us to seek healing. And so this very peculiar procedure with a woman accused of adultery is the same story. Don't drink the water, but lead it unto healing. And that is then basically the story of the Passover as well. Because when we then, how do we get reconciled with the Master? When we repent and we seek His healing. Because if we are going to drink that cup, it will be shown that our works, how righteous they might have been, has been insufficient, and that we stand guilty. And for that, there is then no cure. And so, in this journey, as I've said, we are going to see many bitterness. We're going to be led to waters of distress and bitterness. But we should then seek healing in that process. And one of the ways in which it has been manifested, one of the ways in which Abba Father has been used as a tutorial, is then through the issue of leprosy. And which is then linked to this week's Torah portion. Because we're going to see how leprosy is then manifested, or is the manifestation of bitterness, of rebellion, of evil speech, of that which is in the heart, which is then manifested in leprosy, through which we then needs to be healed. And for that there's then a procedure. And so we've been given this tutorial of leprosy in this week's Torah portion prior to Passover, precisely for that purpose, to say, look at leprosy, because it speaks about the bitterness of the heart prior to going into Passover. As preparation for Passover, look at the story and around leprosy, to deal with the hurt, to deal with the hurt that you've caused, to deal with our pain. So, Tazria and Metzora, Leviticus 12 and up to 15, in short years, they're combined as one portion. Short years meaning there's 12 months, long years, which is 13 months like this one, they separated. And then we find this amazing verse in this portion of Leviticus 14. This is the Torah for any infection of leprosy, to teach when it is clean and when it is unclean and when it is clean. Because it is about this understanding of what is clean and what is unclean, what is holy, what is common, which speaks about the conditions of our heart. And that's why we also have to clean our houses from the chametz, from the leaven, as a practical tool, as a method of saying, we do this physical thing of taking out the leaven out of the house, but it's actually a process of learning the separation between what is clean and unclean, what is holy, what is common, so that we can get in this habit of understanding clean, unclean, holy and common, because mixing them is to profane what our Father has said. And it is out of this mixing that comes the hurt. It's out of this mixing that comes the confusion. It is out of this mixing that we actually create our own maras from which He would like us to get healing. So, in order to be healed, He will do it. But there's a separate teaching that linked to it, and that is, understand the boundaries between clean and unclean, holy and common. Because if you understand those boundaries, it will enable you to avoid Mara or to create Mara for other people. So let's look at that a bit. We also see that this is going to be something of the future as well. And they, the priests, are to teach my people the difference between the set apart, the holy, and the profane, the common, and make them known what is unclean and clean. Ezekiel 44 talking about time to come. And it's linked to the Passover message. Clean, unclean. Holy, common. It's linked to the fact that we need to have healing from the bitterness. And the very interesting thing about this Torah portion, in all its detail that it goes through, it deals with human skin, garments, and the walls of houses. And the common denominator among all of them is that they are all boundaries between an inside and an outside. And it is a priest that must inspect this boundary, and by looking at this boundary, say something about the inside. And then make a proclamation about what is happening by looking at the outside. And so this boundary condition is being created. And so now we suddenly look different at the leprosy story, because it's only a reflection of what is the inside. In the inside there's the hurt, there's the pain, because we're at Mara. And we're drinking the cup of Mara, and we're sharing the cup of Mara with everybody. Or we are healed. And it is visible through then the leprosy. And it can take various different forms. Now we don't find leprosy like of this kind anymore in practice. But in preparation for Passover, we can ask the questions, what is on our boundaries? And do we trespass boundaries ourselves? And to what extent do we trespass boundaries ourselves? What decay in the boundary can be found? Whether it be skin, clothes, walls, it is to a priestly mind, it is a sign of the disorder within. It's not a task for a physician. It's not a task for a medical doctor. But it requires spiritual insight to be able to discern what this boundary condition is about. And therefore, Passover is this time to inspect the boundaries. And it's not only at Passover, but Passover especially. And so we currently see in the world that boundaries are being tested everywhere. It's been tested in Ukraine, but it's tested on every single place in the world. Boundaries are being tested. Morally, ethically, economically, politically, financially. There is not a domain in the world where boundaries are not being tested. Why are boundaries being tested at the time of Passover? Because Passover is a time where we have to learn about boundaries. And it is about those boundaries that we have then to consider, also for our healing. Because it's where boundaries have been broken, where boundaries have been violated, where boundaries have been ignored, it's caused a pain. Every pain, every form of hurt, every form of distress has been caused because boundaries have been transgressed. Either we have transgressed the boundaries, or the boundaries, other people have transgressed our boundaries. It goes both ways. We must receive healing, but we must also be able to give healing where the boundaries, where we have transgressed boundaries. And hence this clean, unclean, holy, common lesson, and why the leprosy message is so tied to Passover, is for us then to consider those boundaries. And where those boundaries have been violated, we sit with the profane. Just a quick update on what the words mean. The set apart or kodesh is for special use, dedicated for a specific task or action, function or purpose. It is a state of content and rest fulfilling that specific function. Shabbat is at ease with itself to be Shabbat. It does not contend with anything else. It's Shabbat. And so, people of Abba Father who has been set apart should rest in His shalom. Your gifting. You rest in peace with how He has created you and me. For that part that you and I have to fulfill in His kingdom, in His fellowship, among His people. Set aside for specific purpose. Common, not dedicated. No distinction between things, for daily, ordinary use. Do your daily tasks from Sundays to Fridays, ordinary use. Set aside Shabbat for itself. And so, confusing them, that is to deal with the profane. To call that which is holy, unholy or common, and that which is common, holy. Transgressing a boundary which Abba Father has set. Just using an example, there can be many more. That's what we have to test in this time of leading up to Passover. Which boundaries have we transgressed? And which boundaries do we need to seek healing from? Clean, pure, ready for use, purged and purified, genuine, i.e. not fake. Being watched and guarded over within and behind a protected wall. The best picture I have is that of dishes. They've been washed and they're in the cupboard, they're behind a protected wall, ready for use. Unclean, defiled, in need of a wash. That's the dishes on the sink. Dishes from the cupboard, on the plates, you've been used to the sink. The difference between clean and unclean. Just as a further example here, in many houses, when I grew up as well, there will be the cutlery that is for Sunday use. And the wrath of Ma will befall you if you use it on a Friday. It is for Sunday use. Okay. That's holy, dedicated cutlery for Sundays. Sunday afternoon lunch. And then there is the cutlery for the rest of the week. That's the common cutlery. It's cutlery. So, that's the difference between holy and common. Something that's set aside for a specific purpose and something that's for general use. Likewise, I'm not sure whether in your house, but in my house, the kitchen scissors are the best. They're always the sharpest and the best. And you always know where to find them. Because they're in the kitchen cupboard. But it's for dedicated use. Now take that and take it to the garden or the garage and the wrath of Ma. Because you've transgressed a boundary. So it's not that difficult. So even for and then when the scissors are dirty, well, it needs a wash and then it's clean again and then it goes to the cupboard again. The problem is that it has been defiled because it has been in the garage. And then there needs to be a procedure for it then to become dedicated again for kitchen use. And so, scissors, plates, we all get the picture, we all understand how it works. But that's how we are as well. We are the utensils in Abba Father's kingdom. He has dedicated us for a specific purpose. Now do that job. Don't take yourself out of this where you are in this relationship with Abba Father and then do something else. Because that's mixing. But during the course of life, one will be clean and unclean. Being unclean is not a sin. There's sometimes a sort of a stigma linked to unclean. Unclean is not a sin. It's just life. And the only thing from unclean, you need a wash. Then you're okay again. There's nothing wrong in being unclean. We've read the Torah portion today. Unclean, take a wash. Then you're clean. You still be holy, set aside for Abba Father's use. It's just unclean. Wash, clean again. And so, I've got a little bit of an illustration here, and hopefully it will work. So, holy, set apart, dedicated, fit for purpose, and common, not dedicated, ordinary, general use. And it is then, mixing these. It's mixing these where the problem lies, where the boundaries are being pushed. And we have to discern what is holy, set apart, dedicated, fit for purpose for a specific thing, and then honor it for that. And then what is common, and then not dedicated, and honor it for that. And when we mix this up, we lead into what Father calls profane. And there's a boundary there. And I've mentioned the one. The transgression of the boundary is when we take gold. Gold is good. There's nothing wrong with gold. Please bring it to me afterwards. I'll take it. All the gold you gave. So it's fine. It's when you call gold your Savior and your Deliverer that has brought you out of Egypt, you usurp the glory from Abba Father. You've transgressed the boundary that is not allowed. And that's the profane. To call something that is for common use. Make the cobblestones of the heaven is made of it. And you've called it what it is not. Is profane. So, usurping Abba Father's glory in prideful making of something what it is not. And so we have to understand this difference between holy and common, because if we don't, we will transgress that. And in transgressing this boundary, we cause hurt and we are being hurt. And that's why he has got this remedy then and say, you have transgressed my boundaries, so I will lead you to Mara so that you can find healing. Also then, the one that I've mentioned, when you take Shabbat, which is holy, set aside, and you call it ordinary or common, you steal from the glory of Abba Father through disrespect. And it causes hurt. Forward, the difference then between holy and common. You can be holy, set apart, can be either clean or unclean. If it's unclean, it needs a wash. Or common and clean and unclean. If it's common and it's unclean, wash it. And mixing those, mixing those are to profane. If it's unclean, it needs a wash. And Abba Father, but out of this mixing up of all of this, out of this profanity, hurt arises. But He doesn't leave us at our hurt. He leads us to Mara so that we can actually find healing. So, boundaries is to lie, is a boundary of truth. Insult is a boundary of respect. Theft is a boundary of property. Immorality is a boundary of covenant. All these boundaries that's being pushed and that's been violated. We're back at Mara and the story of Mara, and I'm almost through. I was wondering about this, and we discussed it last night, my wife and I. And then I realized that He took them out of Egypt and He brought them to Mara, and He said to them, I know that you have been hurt in Egypt because your boundaries, have been violated in Egypt. Boundaries have been violated in Egypt, and you've been enslaved. And because your boundaries have been violated, you are hurting. And therefore, I would like to heal you by restoring your boundaries to you. And so many of us, we have to learn what those boundaries in our lives are, what the differences are between holy and unholy, clean and unclean, so that we can live according to those boundaries, but also realize that in reality, in the world, we are seeing the boundaries being destroyed everywhere and every facet, and that it is causing hurt. But the solution is Passover. The last verse, our Messiah dealt with a leprous man, the unclean man. And we read in Mark 1, and the leper came to him, calling upon him, kneeling down to him and saying to him, if you desire, you are able to make me clean. And Yeshua, moved with compassion, stretched out his hand and touched him and said to him, I desire it, be cleansed. And immediately the leprosy left him, and he was cleansed. And having strictly warned him, immediately sent him away and said to him, see, say none at all to anyone, but go, you show yourself to the priest and offer this for your cleansing what Moses ordered, today's Torah portion, as a witness to them. And so, the process that our Messiah has laid out in those couple of verses is basically, suspect that something is fishy. I'm a leper. I'm at Mara. Request an inspection by a priest, by the Messiah himself. Recognize an identification of the problem and then the prescription. Cry out to him for healing. And out of that comes then the healing and the restoration, which then ultimately requires a wash, a touch by the Messiah himself, washed by his blood, the blood of the Lamb, and then be declared clean by the priest, the high priest, being accepted and incorporated by society and in the kingdom, and out of that, being a witness. And so, we have this coming together of everything, that in the preparation for Passover, we will be confronted with Mara unto healing. But we also have to ask the questions, why are there all these distresses? Why are there all the pain in the world? Because we have transgressed boundaries. And so in this time we can actually inspect and ask the question, which boundaries have I transgressed? Where did people transgress my boundaries? And ask for healing. Realizing that the unclean man, that's me. But there's the high priest who will touch me, bring me to healing, help me to discern the boundaries so that I can live a life according to his pattern and be a witness of his great deeds of miraculous healing where he has calmed the storm in our lives. Let's pray. Our Father, thank you for your word and for your teaching about leprosy, and that it is about boundaries that's being violated. Where we have transgressed boundaries and where others have transgressed boundaries against us. That has led to inner hurt, bitterness and rebellion. Rebellion against you, rebellion against others. But that we can cry unto you in a time like this, time of Passover, and ask you to restore your boundaries, to restore your boundaries in our lives. Give us insight into what is clean and unclean, what is holy and unholy, and then be brave enough to live according to those boundaries. And then be a witness of your glorious healing and your miraculous deeds and the sweetness of it, of being able to say, I've been touched by the Redeemer. I'm healed. And there's a message of restoration. Unto the glory of our King and Messiah, Yeshua. Amen.